So I want to start off with a question for the governor. Just to say, before you started public service, you had a long career as an entrepreneur and an executive in the technology industry. So what from that did you bring to your role as governor? What things from that are you bringing into your role running the state of North Dakota?
Well, I think there's a couple things, but first, before I even get into that, I just want to say to everybody that's here, thanks for being here and thanks for what you do, because as Theodore Roosevelt famously said at one time, the great prize in life is the opportunity to work hard at work worth doing. And so if you've got a career in technology and you're working in security, it's so important to the citizens of our nation and to the future of this country. I just want to say thank you for doing it, and thanks to Palo Alto for sponsoring this. And great to be here. But yeah, it is a little unusual, Rick. I was been in technology for 3 decades. Was born and raised North Dakota farm kid, but ended up in software with a startup that grew, that ended up going public. That was acquired by Microsoft. I was there as a senior executive for a number of years. Then I started investing in tech companies, and up till 2.5 years ago, I was chairman of Atlassian, which I'm sure a number of you have heard, which has got products which I'm sure all these guys are using. And so to go from there into the public sector, my first time in, it was a big shift. But one of the things that you understand right away, in technology, it's all about the people. And in government, as was said in the prior panel, the race for talent, this is going to all be about people. And then the other pieces, I would say, we heard this morning, is some of the procurement approaches in government are way behind. So one of the things that's not surprising when you step into government is the burden of all the legacy systems that government has, and that the vast chunk of resources in IT in government is being used towards maintaining legacy systems as opposed towards transforming to a new world. And so there's a number of structural challenges about how people are compensated, how products are acquired, that we're having to sort of break down the culture and the processes to try to drive to catch up, because I think when I ran, I said, hey, I think there's some low-hanging fruit where we can get the data in the room, get the ideology out of the room, that we can, make progress, not just on cyber, but on healthcare, on education, on our tribal engagement, on all number of fronts we can make progress. But when we got into office, it wasn't that there was low-hanging fruit. There was like fruit all over the floor, and you were stepping on it. So it's like we have such a big opportunity, and I think as I talk to other governors, that exists. And so I'm excited about the progress that we've made. I'm sure we'll talk about some of that, but there's a long way to go, and grateful for all the great people that are here that are working to solve these important problems.
So that leads to a quick follow-up about what do you take from your time in the private sector into your role as governor in terms of the government's role in fostering innovation?
Well, it turns out I think it's actually very important to do that. But to foster innovation, you have to have people that are willing to take risks, and the culture in government has often been highly risk averse. I was, after we got into office, for the first time, there's always been a budgeting process across all the agencies, and the culture was if your budget went up, you were a winner. If your budget went down, you were a loser. And it wasn't really about outcomes. It wasn't about innovation. So trying to transform a risk-averse culture into a one that's based on creativity and on risk-taking is hard. And it really starts with the values. And two of the values three, we got 4 values that we talk about, but one of them is humility, because people have to have the willingness to be able to say, hey, the way we've always done it isn't the right approach to how we're going forward. Take something as simple as if the war on drugs has been going on for 30 years, and a part of that process, we're taking people who have the disease of addiction and turning them into an enemy combatant, using that kind of language. And then we spend $41,000 a year locking someone up who's got a health problem. So we're criminalizing a health problem. You have to just say, hey, look, we have to have the humility that 3 or 4 decades of that didn't work. And then you have to have the curiosity, the second value, which is part of curiosity. You have to have the curiosity to say, well, how can we do it differently? And then the third value is you got to have the courage to take the risk to try to actually work on something. But I believe that people went into government because they want to solve problems and make the world a better place. And we have to create an environment where they actually get a chance to do that.
That's great. I love that. Amit, so it's been a year, almost to the day, since you took over as president of Palo Alto Networks. So, and you had a long career as an entrepreneur in the cloud and AI environment. What was attractive about Palo Alto Networks that caused you to come be the president?
Actually, the biggest thing that attracted me to the industry is the sense of mission. I've always been attracted to hard problems, as I mentioned earlier. This is a pretty hard problem. Trying to secure the nation's infrastructure, do it when the threat landscape is changing, our networks and cloud and the data is moving everywhere. Felt like something that I could sink my teeth into, partner with many of the people in the room, and honestly change the trajectory of the company. The company had incredible culture, strategy, history, legacy, and needed to transform to keep up with the pace of transformation that's occurring in every company as well as every agency that's represented here. And that requires new thinking. In our case, it required deeper investment on the product side, in some cases acquisitions and so on. Those are things that excite me. And but most importantly, and I echo what Doug was talking about, it's this is actually really important work. Everything all of you do every day is, you might lose sight of it, but we're really trying to make the world a safer place, and that's something to be part of.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Governor, when national security professionals, like a lot of folks in the audience here, think of North Dakota, they think, like I do, of it being the home of two legs of the strategic nuclear deterrent triad, the bombers and the ICBMs, and flying out of Minot Air Force Base, like we were talking about earlier. In your role as governor, how do you see your role and your state's role in fighting the threats that we face today in cyberspace?
Well, we've had a lot of top brass here today, literally, and people like yourself with the military service, so thank you for your service. But certainly North Dakota plays a big role with the Grand Forks Air Force Base, which is now the center for the Global Hawk worldwide, and then the Minot Air Force Base, which is the only base in the country which has got two of the three. We've got a missile wing and a B-52 bomber wing, and both of those are still actively engaged in world affairs today. And then, of course, we've got in Fargo the 119th. We got the Happy Hooligans down there, and those folks are involved in unmanned work, and they're actively flying missions in the Middle East right now today out of Fargo, but remotely piloted. So the military presence in North Dakota is large, and of course, then because of the nuclear assets that we have there, this is in how we're connected into the community and everything else, and then our state system. A small state, but all of K-12, all of higher education, a lot of political local subdivisions are all in the same network. So we have 250,000 people on the same network across state government. We've got the military assets. We're the intersection of two of the grids, MISO and SPP. So the electrical grid, a lot of the nation's power is generated in North Dakota. So we are, I would say, a target-rich environment for foreign nationals. And so I think it's one of the reasons why we're so focused on cyber in North Dakota is because it's not just a local thing for us, it's helping to protect the nation.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. Amit, people talk about public-private partnership a lot, and it can be overused. Palo Alto has been working with North Dakota for a while now. What about North Dakota did you recognize as different?
So I have to give credit to Mark. I don't know if he's in the room, chairman, and we actually found kindred spirits with the leadership that the governor brought to the table, not just himself, the chancellor, the CIO. We ended up doing something pretty different and special, I'd say, from, we'll talk about that, but we built a program of education where we're training cybersecurity professionals in North Dakota. We built a curriculum for that, our company did, not just for our products, but general curriculum. Deployed that through higher education. We're bringing that through the K-12 market, the K-12 education system. And frankly, these will be much needed cybersecurity professionals for all of you, as well as for us. In addition to that, we partnered around showcasing and bringing together the best technology and expertise that on the IT side to make the defenses of North Dakota, with everything that the governor talked about, the best in class. And we actually believe that North Dakota is as far ahead as anybody else in the commercial sector. In fact, in many cases, they were able to do it. They were able to leapfrog some of the legacy systems and put in a platform in place that makes them incredibly resilient. There's so many lessons here that I'm sure the governor should talk about of how to actually do this integrated between education, between IT, between the actual political part of the government, on how they all came together to agree to doing something very, very strategic and special.
That takes leadership too. And Governor, in your role in North Dakota, you started a program called K20W, which is a great cover name. It sounds like something my old outfit would come up with. Can you explain what that is and about the importance of the people component of this?
Well, it really relates to what Amit was saying is, it came out of the discussion that we all understood, and the last panel talked about it, that we've got a huge talent shortage. The last panel was up here, was talking about the need to get it all the way down into elementary school, which can shock some legislators. They need to do that. But then we also have put together a great team. We said we've got a chancellor in North Dakota. He's here, Chancellor Hagerott, but you got someone who's a Rhodes Scholar, White House Fellow, Naval Academy graduate, nuclear engineer, studied at Oxford, taught cyber at the Naval Academy. Who gets one of those? We have a superintendent of public instruction, independently elected. She's got a background that included technology, bringing technology into high schools. Our chief operating officer the last 2.5 years had worked with me in the software industry for the last 25 years. Sean Riley, who we recruited to come as our CEO, really forward thinking. He's here at the conference. So Michelle Comer runs commerce, came from the private sector. So we got a bunch of private sector folks that got into leadership roles, is one of the things that was key to be able to then help, I say, ring the alarm bell and have an understanding of how much risk you're at. But on the K20 Initiative, this is really kindergarten or even pre-K through PhD, and we've got programs that go everything from certifications to camps. As Amit was talking about, we're the first state in the nation that's actually got the grade level requirements of what it takes to be cyber certified as a second grader. That sounds weird to say that, but but we want to know. We said, what do you teach a second? What should they know to be safe in how they're interacting? What should a third grader know? And then teaching the teachers and certifying the teachers to be able to do that. So we're working through getting thousands of teachers that ramped up on this, and our superintendent signed, was passed by the legislators, signed in. They were given permission. So last February was when this all kicked off. I just had the opportunity on our statewide awards to give the K20W team, the whole team, which cuts across private, public sector, all grade levels, working together to make this happen. Our annual Roaming Bison Award for the year for excellence in teamwork. But it's exciting, and we think it'd be a role model for the rest of the country.
Yeah, that is a great model. Amit, you basically came to the cybersecurity industry from the enterprise arena that you're now selling Palo Alto Networks products to. And for all those companies, cybersecurity is not their core business, but it's something they have to care a lot about at the director, board, and corporate level. As you look at things like the interaction with North Dakota, and the governor's activities, what's your advice to folks here in the government who are trying to figure out how do they evaluate their cybersecurity?
Sure. Look, I spent a lot of time talking to CEOs and boards, and the worst thing is like they read a headline, like you see headlines every week, right? They don't want to be that headline. Whether you're an agency, small, large, company, small, large. The brand value loss, the loss of trust of whether it's citizens or your consumers and customers, the actual disruption that it causes and the revenue loss, it's tremendous, right? We had a client, wasn't a client then, but they were shut down for 3 weeks. You see that, there's cities that are shut down, for ransomware. This is incredibly disruptive to people's day-to-day lives. You can't get paychecks. This is wrong, and we have to stop it. And my advice is really, look, everyone here is a professional, has been doing this for a long time, and I said, it's a fast-changing landscape. The first thing is to just learn about it, and that's what audiences like this are. Learn from other people, see what they are, what are the best practices. The second thing is to actually just step back for a minute. You might have done things a certain way in the past, and that was the right thing at that time. it's quite possible that it may have run its course and something new has to occur. And that new thing has all the elements of this technology, like technology is new, the threat landscape's new, different things are happening, and it's quite possible that what you did is not sufficient. New stuff has to happen. The second thing is actually the people. A highly underappreciated part of this whole thing is the training, the education, the understanding, the sharing. We put so much emphasis on products and tools, and it might be ironic that I'm saying that, but it's totally like, most of the folks in the room are not getting the most of what they have. I don't think you'll disagree. So the time spent in thinking through that, and the last thing, and I said that to a client yesterday, was like thinking about this cloud journey and stuff, and we had this incredible, like, energetic session. It's like first principles. Always good to step back and look at first principles. Based on this, what is the right thing to do? Now, you may not be there yet, right? That's okay. But what is that path to get there over a quarter, year period? And what are the thoughtful ways you can kind of make progress against all these dimensions? And I honestly, not to put words in your mouth, I think that that's very similar to, I think, what the governor and the team that he assembled did.
Great, thanks. Governor, you are the first state to come up with this idea of a shared service for cybersecurity strategy and delivery across all the different components of the state government, and even perhaps with some of your neighboring states. What do you see as the advantages in terms of the delivery of service to your clients, the citizens of North Dakota?
Well, I think everybody in the audience understands that this is a scale business, and there's going to be a fixed cost, to building a SOC. You want to attract the very best talent. You want to, pay the best people, and there's a scale thing, which is, okay, now that you've built that, should they be protecting, one state, or they should be protecting 2 states, or 3 states, or 4 states? I mean, how do you think about it? And we've had conversations with Minnesota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana. None of them were as far along as we were, and all of them were eager. They all understood that their budgets are constrained, their talent constrained, and so then all of a sudden collaboration works on both a budget and talent standpoint. And then if you can actually deliver better security through doing that, then it makes both economic and political sense. So I think this is a relatively new idea. Sean Riley, our CIO, is really driving this thing. He had some great meetings this week, in Minnesota with some of their largest school districts who are also just sort of flat-footed, don't have the resources, and these are large organizations. I mean, 45,000 students in the Hennepin County, that's the core of Minneapolis school district, and they've got one person working in security. I mean, they can't even think. They're buried. They can't even think about how do they go to the next level. So I think we're going to see again. Maybe this will be another model for regional collaboration across states. And I would just say with credit to our chancellor, who's a bit of a military historian as well, is that when we talk about projecting military power and fighting a global battle, because I view that the future of war is not, there's war and then there's a separate thing called cyber war. It's all connected. Right. And as you heard some of the generals and retireds up here talking this morning, I mean, every piece of equipment we build is filled with componentry, and it doesn't matter whether it's a tank or a combine, or a tractor. I mean, or anything in the oil field. All the equipment there that's being deployed in North Dakota is a huge leader in energy. We're the #2 oil producer now behind Texas, which is another strategic reason why we would be an attack area. But all of this plays into the Internet of Things and why companies like Palo Alto making great acquisitions to drive there. I mean, we've got to secure all of these. You have to secure all these endpoints. But the point that our chancellor was making is that it's been since the end of the Civil War, since the states were on the front line. All of the wars after that, we've been fighting overseas, and it's kind of an abstract concept for people that aren't in the military. But this is a war that's being fought right here. It's being fought, in Atlanta and Colorado, and cities that are being attacked and hacked and held ransom. So we've got a battle going on our domestic right now, and I think conceptually people don't get that. So the states are on the front line. We had another panelist this morning talking about elections. Okay, that's states. I mean, that's our responsibility to secure that at the state, the county, the township, the city thing. So whether it's elections and whether it's the data, think what the data that the state has. We have everybody's We have criminal data, we have tax data, we have financial data, we've got educational data. Every state's a huge medical insurance company because every state's involved in Medicare, Medicaid, expanded Medicaid. And so we've got health records on practically everybody in the state. So I mean, this is not like we're Target and you can find out the last 10 purchases you made when you find out it's on your credit card. I mean, we know everything about every citizen, and I feel it's our responsibility to protect that information. It's imperative. It's really one of the things that we need to do at the state level. And whether it's at the military, where we've got hundreds of billions of dollars of spending on equipment, and then we spend a little bit on cyber. At the state level, we're in North Dakota, where we spend billions and tens of billions of dollars to run a state, and then you're fighting to get one more FTE approved for cyber. I mean, people don't quite get it yet that we do have to shift the resources from this physical world to the cyber world, and we're behind. I mean, I'd say that if I was going to leave one challenge here is we've got to figure out a way to resource up as a country at all levels of government to take this more seriously.
Yeah,
and Rick, if I may add, I mean, the story you were telling last night on precision agriculture, autonomous agriculture, I mean, I think that just takes it to the next level, where so much of agriculture now is being conducted with machines. It's, drones. I mean, it's fascinating to see all that. And you can imagine that your food supply chain then is impacted by the capabilities that you have in deploying.
Yeah, we're working on trying to build the first fully autonomous farm in the world called Grand Farm as a project, but that's labeled, it's sort of levered off what we're working on, we call Grand Sky, where we've got the first private-public partnership business park, but between the military and the whole, fast-growing UAS space, unmanned aerial systems. We're at Grand Forks Air Force Base, where we've got, Harris, General Atomic, and other major players, plus 40 startups all working on UAS technology. We've got the first FAA-approved beyond visual line of sight, so people can fly without a chase plane within a 75-mile radius. Our legislature this last year passed historic legislation, very visionary, which is going to give us funding to have the entire state have an air traffic control system for drones, so we can use it, as Amit was saying, for agriculture, for energy, for pipeline safety. But when you start intermixing drones into airspace, and then where are the components, where are those drones built, what are the pieces in there, are they connected to an IoT, could they be taken over? I mean, it opens up a whole new set of things, and then we know from trying to defend 2 Air Force bases and a bunch of remote missile sites in North Dakota. I mean, the joke always was that if North Dakota succeeded from the nation, we'd be the 3rd largest nuclear power in the world, and I think that's still probably true. No plans for that, but I'd say we have a lot of sites out there that we need to protect. And I mean, you can't be in this world where if you got a $400 Best Buy drone that's entering airspace over a missile site. What are we going to shoot it with $1 million rocket? I mean, what do we do? So we are way behind on counter UAS, and that's another thing that we're trying to focus on as we're building out this statewide air traffic control system. Is we've got to be able to solve some of those issues.
So we've only got a few minutes left. So I would ask you, Governor, what's North Dakota doing in terms of incorporating new technologies like cloud, machine learning? You talked a little bit about that in terms of precision agriculture. How about energy? You mentioned that North Dakota is the 2nd largest energy production and delivery entity in the country. Yeah, well, one interesting thing, in addition to the precision ag, when we took office 2.5 years ago, there was 10,000 people camping illegally on Army Corps land in North Dakota related to the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, and some of you may have heard it was in the international news. That wasn't the pipeline crossing that I was worried about when we took office. I mean, it's most technologically advanced. It's 93 feet below the bottom of the river. It's got all the latest detection equipment, but it's, practicing our principle of curiosity, new to the office, I said, well, how many pipeline crossings do we have in this nation that cross water? Well, there's 38,000 of those. How many in North Dakota? About 400. What's the oldest pipeline we have that we know of? Well, they're built in the 1950s. Well, those directional drilling didn't exist then, although they just laid those on the bottom of the river. So we've got risk. I mean, there's the risk that you could have a pipeline spill in our country that would, cause, a tremendous pollution event in a water supply, and then could that be an act of terrorism, domestic terrorism? I mean, sure, it could be. So I'm worried about all that. So then you say, well, you can't. How do you inspect all this stuff, and what's the state of the art? And it turns out that
Most of that was also very aging. So we took R&D dollars from the state of North Dakota. We put up a contest, kind of like a Shark Tank for pipeline intelligence called iPipe. And it's not a vaping product. And
you haven't been
and Apple hasn't come after us yet on the thing, but they might now that this is being broadcast on the thing. But anyway, so the iPipe contest was about, how do we have intelligence in the pipe? Because everybody's, has probably heard, there's a thing called a PIG, pipeline, inspection, that would like slide down and do that. Well, now we've got everything from golf ball sized devices that they can drop down that are low cost, that go down and do acoustic work. There's ones that float that can also be tracked by drones. There's a group that came in with a proposal for paint, that you paint the seam, and the paint itself has actually got sensors in the paint, so they would be able to do early detection. And we've talked to all the pipeline entities. We got them all in a room and said, do you want to spend $100 million on a cleanup, or do you want to spend spend money on R&D? Because we did, over the last few years, we had one that was found by a rancher and one that was found by a farmer. And I just said, look, our farmers and ranchers are not going to be your early warning system. We need to figure out a way to do this thing. And we should have the same goal for pipelines that we've had for commercial aviation. Commercial aviation, is the safest thing you can do in this country. There's been one death, the unfortunate passenger that was sitting next to a window that was killed by a flying part. There's been 0 in 9 years. And so we said to the pipeline industry, the goal here ought to be 0. It's 0 spills. They're like, that's impossible. No, it's not impossible. It's totally, if you're going to have government hire someone who's driving around in a pickup with a clipboard, you're going to have spills, because humans are not good at data collection and they can't cover the vast distances. North Dakota is the size of all 6 New England states combined. Okay, that's how large our state is, and we're not the biggest western state. So we have all this geography to cover. We have to do it through automatically collected data, automatic sensors, and that's one area where, again, we're matching R&D with the private sector. Public partnerships, like we're doing with Palo Alto, is part of the solution that we have to have, and that's an area where we can bring technology to something that's really important. And again, I just at a broadest level, if you care about the environment, then you should care that we're doing energy production in the United States, because the United States does it cleaner and safer than anyone else in the world. So if you want to reduce carbon emissions, then have the US be energy dominant, and allow us to sell energy to our allies versus buy it from our enemies. And that changes everything that everybody in a uniform up here has been working on since World War II. It changes everything. It's the biggest geopolitical change in 70 years, is the fact that we could actually be not just energy independent, but energy dominant. But that requires all of the work that's going on here, because we have to protect that resource and protect the water and the land that resource is moving through.
Yeah, makes sense. Amit, I'm going to give you the final word. One thing, so Palo Alto Networks is the largest enterprise cybersecurity company in the world now, so congratulations. So what's next, and how does what's next interface with what's going on between Palo Alto and North Dakota?
Yeah. Look, for us, as I mentioned earlier, look, we're trying to make every day a little bit safer. And we'll do whatever it takes from our companies, with our resources, our products, our people, to continue to evolve. We're a product company at our core, so some of it will represent itself in product maturity, making them available, make them useful, get the most out of them. Honestly, we've had so much great work done in this room to deploy the products, but I'll tell you, people aren't using them. And I was trying to get that going, have telemetry in the product, so we can give you best practices automatically. You don't have to design those every time. You can expect us to continue to build out these platforms. Some of it is organic, some of it is through acquisitions. We see tremendous uptake and potential in cloud computing as a force for innovation. And as exciting as that is, it also creates levels of security and new ways of thinking about security and DevOps and so on. So you can expect us to do more there. And finally, and most importantly, is trying to figure out what makes sense to you. We obviously have ideas. We come at it from our view. But I think it's the combination of discussions that unlocks partnerships like North Dakota. I suspect we can have those with each one of you in the room. I really think that's what actually unlocks a better cybersecurity posture for everybody here.
Okay.
I was just gonna
Governor, yes.
Closing plug. Sean Riley, our terrific CIO from the state of North Dakota, is going to be doing a breakout this afternoon. If you've been intrigued by anything that's been said here, you can learn more about the partnership that we have, private-public partnership, the work we're doing with Palo Alto at the state of North Dakota during his breakout this afternoon. I'd encourage you to go there. He's got a lot of great details and a lot of fun ideas that could be transferable to the work you're doing. So again, thanks for us to have the opportunity to be here. We appreciate it.
Gentlemen,
Wonderful.
thank you both, and thank you both for being here and for your interest in helping the nation be safer every day.
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
Thank you.